Cool.
So, can you hear me, guys? Are we fine? Yeah,
I
cool,
think
cool. Sorry for the delay, and I was with the family. So, I want to say hello to everyone, and we are here for our next community call and Ask Me Anything session. We usually ask Adam lots of questions, anything we want. This week, the topic that we want to explore is DAOs and what it means to have a DAO which is BrightID enabled. The first thing that comes to my mind is having a DAO with each member being verified on BrightID, meaning that each member has only that one account in the DAO is only a member of a DAO once as a unique member of the DAO. So we're sure that everyone is only handling one of those tokens. Also, we're sure that everyone is voting definitely by the power that is assigned to them. Now, in our own DAOs, in BrightID main and other sub DAOs that we have, each member has equal vote. I'm pretty sure that's the case, right? Like every one of us has equal exact vote, and we know each other. We all. I know which token belongs to Phil. I know which token belongs to Adam, and it's a limited number. So we weren't necessarily thinking about having BrightID verified people in the DAO because it's like 10 people, 15 people. We know these people. But I think BrightID verification and having it DAO with BrightID verified people makes more sense when it's like large numbers of people in a DAO, that people don't necessarily know each other. But do you think that right now there are DAOs with multitudes of members that are suffering from not having BrightID verification, not having uniqueness for each member? And if that's the case, I want to hear the thoughts of how to attract more DAOs to consider having uniqueness in them, consider using BrightID or any proof of uniqueness to improve themselves. And let's explore how that would improve them. In what scenarios do you think a DAO with a uniqueness tool like BrightID is different than any other DAO?
Yeah, I think that question you asked would be a good one to open up to everybody that's here, because several of us I know are members of different DAOs and have some personal experience. Does anyone know about a DAO or is a member of a DAO where they wish, like, oh man, this would be better if we had BrightID verification?
So it's not exactly that, but I'll bring up, so Uniswap, there's a lot of contention going on right now because there are some big interests that have a lot of control of Uniswap tokens, and they're putting forth proposals that are beneficial to them, sort of self benefit, and they're pushing them through against the wishes of a lot of the community members. And because it's entirely token-based voting, and the people opposed to this are trying to say, hey, look, the community doesn't support this, and it's kind of close, and it's like top names on the community versus like VCs on the other side. But if there was some way to also count people, I think that would be a useful tool. Because right now, there's a bunch of Uniswap people. There's a whole bunch of people that have, say, 400 Uni tokens. They got it in the airdrop. They believed in Uniswap. They're still participants. They don't have 100,000. Their vote doesn't matter. They don't have a voice. And maybe if they had something BrightID, they could have some kind of voice in that discussion.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. So I think when we talk about, I mean, that's the recurring thing that I keep seeing with DAOs, where I personally think, yeah, this could be better with BrightID, is to avoid the plutocracy that you mentioned. And plutocracy is where the rich people are the rulers. You rule. You use your riches to rule, and that's if you look at different DAOs and DAO-like structures. So if you let's look at Gitcoin. So Gitcoin is not a DAO, but the way it works, because it has voting, and voting takes the form of you give a little money to the projects that you like. That's your vote, and so in that way it is kind of like a DAO, and it's made better because it counts people just as much as it does money. So when they're deciding how much to match for the matching fund, it looks at how many people support a project just as much as it looks at how much money is supporting the project. So it's the same way with DAOs and other DAO-like things that use BrightID. If I look at OneHive, Celeste is a very interesting one. So what they've done, Celeste is not a DAO. They don't call themselves a DAO. It's kind of like a, I mean, they don't call themselves a court system, but I think that's the thing that people are can most easily equate it to if they're not familiar with it. So it's for
a subjective oracle.
Right. It's an oracle. That's yeah, a subjective oracle is really what, like, the proper name for it. But we can think about it as a place for resolving disputes, and you can almost think of it as like a court system. So let's say that let's say that there's some other DAO somewhere else that has rules, and that says, like, these are the rules of our DAO, and someone breaks the rules in that DAO, and then they want to resolve the dispute. Maybe one group of people in the DAO says, no, it's not breaking the rules. One group of people in the DAO says, yes, it is breaking the rules. Rather than just, having the DAO itself try to resolve it, they can take it to this dispute resolution system, Celeste, and they can say, okay, look, here's our constitution or our charter or our document that says, like, this is how the DAO is supposed to be run. Here's the case. And then it's they pick people to resolve from their pool of people that they have available. It's kind of like picking a jury of people to resolve the dispute. So that's one important way that Celeste can be used. Now, the really interesting thing about it is that you have to lock up some honey tokens to be in there. And you also get paid a reward currently for locking up honey tokens. So if this is something you're interested in, decentralized governance, I would suggest go and check out Celeste, see if you want to lock up some honey and earn some rewards for being in the pool of potential jurors for just resolving disputes in the Celeste platform. So check out Celeste. But anyways, the point that I wanted to make about Celeste and why it's not a plutocracy is, let's say that it was just about how much money you locked in. If deciding whether or not you were going to be selected as the juror was just about how much money you locked in, then you can basically buy the court. You can buy the court system. You could buy out. You could buy all the slots basically, and make sure that you get to run the court. And so what they do, the way they use BrightID, which is really interesting, is they say, okay, we're going to limit the amount that you can put in for yourself. So there's a limit of, let's say, $10,000 worth of honey. And that's the most that anyone can put in. So there can be no mega whales. No one can put in $1 million and say, okay, I'm going to own the court system. And so they use BrightID to limit the power of whales in the same way that Gitcoin uses BrightID to limit the power of whales. So I would say that DAOs can use that same idea If there's lots of ways to do it, you can be clever about it, but limit the power of whales. And the simplest way to do it is say, okay, you can buy voting tokens, but you can only buy, each person can only buy up to X number of voting tokens. You can't buy any more than that because we want to limit the power of whales in our DAO. So that's one kind of simple way to do it.
I've got an interesting thing I just came across today. So I'm a Gitcoin steward in the Gitcoin DAO, and I have some tokens myself, and I've been allocated. Other tokens have been delegated to me by other people. So they hold the token, but they're giving the voting power to me because I'm active. And I noticed today that I've got a huge delegation. Someone's delegating 150,000 tokens to me. So this is over $1 million worth of Gitcoin tokens. Obviously, it's a whale. It's just an address. So I went on Etherscan and I look, hey, who is, what can I figure out? And it's a very clean address that's sort of like gotten Gitcoin from Coinbase. But then, so they got in 600,000 and they broke it up into 4 chunks, and they put it 150 on 4 different people. Just like pretty interesting. And like, I don't know how BrightID fits in any of that, but I'm like, huh, like what's going on? And the people that they chose are like quality, Gitcoin supporting people. I feel good about this, but it's just a really weird dynamic to see. And I don't know, it feels related to the kind of things that we're doing. That person does have a tremendous amount of power. They're not voting it themselves. They're choosing who gets it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is interesting.
Coming back to the idea of like coin voting, basically, is and should we kind of limit it to, or should we use like a Sybil resistant mechanism like BrightID to limit how many people, how much people can vote? There was an interesting article Vitalik posted recently. I put it in the chat there, basically discussing this and moving beyond coin voting, right? And I think the traditional argument for coin voting is like this skin in the game kind of concept, where if you've invested enough to amass this amount of tokens, then essentially you have the most to lose if this protocol fails, and therefore you should have more to say, and you're incentivized to lead the protocol to success because you have most to lose. But then we get into the same issue of going in a direction that the community doesn't want to go. So it's an interesting kind of balance to kind of strike, when if you decide to give one person one vote, then you are disincentivizing people necessarily to hold more value in the token, because then your success is subjected to the masses, which maybe the masses will choose something that you don't want. And then you have to dump your tokens, which hurts the community even further. So I think the question becomes, what protocols benefit more from the skin in the game type of mentality, and what protocols benefit from a one person, one vote thing, right? If we're decoupling the financial aspect of these things, then we have 2 discrete kind of camps. And I think that's worth kind of investigating and talking about.
Yeah, definitely worth investigating. And it's different for each case, but I'm attracted to the skin in the game, but let me give you an example of where that kind of fails. So like, I'm by no means, I was never really a uni whale, but I had uni, and I wanted to, it was one of the earliest governance tokens, and I thought, okay, what can I govern? Let's get in on this. Like, I would love to have some influence on the rewards pools for stable coins. What can I do here? And I looked at it, and I just got the feeling like, okay, this is a whale game. Like, this is like, I can't even really participate. I wanted to. I felt like I did have some skin in the game, but I felt like I felt like my vote was irrelevant, like the same way that you feel when you're voting for like the president of the United States. It's like, you know, I have one of 100 million votes, so like who even cares? Like, why should I even bother to go out? So that's one thing you definitely want to avoid. And then the other thing, and that comes from this feeling of that like there's someone else that just has more power than you, and you will never be able to like compete with that person. So I think what I like, so I do like skin in the game though, because the other side, if there's no skin in the game, is like, oh great, they gave me a vote, but I don't care, I don't know, like someone gave me these tokens, I don't even know what this is for, I know that they have some money. So when someone comes along to me and says like, hey, let me buy your tokens from you so I can vote with them, or let me, you know, even worse, it could be something like, let me rent your tokens from you, let me pay you so that, you know, to vote the way that I want, or something like that. So if you think of them as votes, someone could buy your vote because you don't care at all, you don't even know. So if you have no skin in the game and you don't know, you don't care, you'll sell your tokens or you'll sell your vote. So that's, you know, that's not good. So I think what we want is we want a balance where everyone has just the right amount of skin in the game. And so what I like doing is using BrightID to limit the amount, so you can't just buy your way into like excessive amounts of skin in the game. So you basically you have to prove. So imagine like a reputation score. Imagine that that the amount of tokens that you can hold or that you can put towards voting is based on your reputation in the community. Have you like been around? Have you done things? Have you proven yourself? Have you engaged? If you've engaged, then you're allowed to buy some more. And then that's the sort of thing that I like, because hopefully that way you get a lot of people, like a lot of people on the same level, like a lot of people that are, you know, striving to prove that they are worthy to buy the token. And there's no like crazy, like no one has any crazy amount of the token. And then you can look at that, you can look back, you can step back and look, and you can say like, okay, I really believe that everybody that's voting like knows and cares a little bit about what they're doing, even though there's, you know, there's money involved, but it's the right amount of money.
What you just said about the voting, where there's multitudes of people, and then you said I don't vote because I'm a member of like 120 million. I'm just one of those guys. So if I don't vote, it doesn't matter so much. Then at the same time, you talked about Uniswap and how you felt like your vote doesn't matter in the same way.
Yep.
But where is the nice spot there where people could be equal at the same time, which makes the problem that I'm just one of the millions, but at the same time they feel like they vote matters without having the veils in the system. I think that the process in Gitcoin would be very optimal in my mind. That's as nice as it gets.
Yeah.
Like there are people like you and Philip who are active, who care about this, who I trust, that are educated enough and know what they are doing. They have done their homework. So people like me can like select Adam, select Philip, and delegate the power that we have. But like, what is your optimal model? Is that as good as it gets?
Yeah, so my optimal model is that you earn your voting power. So yeah, it's not that everybody's exactly equal. It's not like one like one, not exactly one person per vote. You can earn your way up to higher voting power, but you earn it within the system. You don't earn it outside the system. The problem with the plutocracy thing is like people earn their voting power by doing other things. Like in the worst case that you could imagine, it could be just inheriting money from someone. So you inherit a bunch of money, you didn't do anything yourself, but you inherited a bunch of money, and now you can like buy a bunch of voting power that you didn't earn in any way. So, but if you can show in the system, like, okay, I have more tokens or more voting powers than this other person, but look, like, here's how I earned it. Like I earned it within the system. I earned it doing more. Like I earned it by voting, by gaining a reputation, by doing some actions, from, you know, helping out, whatever the case may be. That's where I earned my voting power. And this is why I'm allowed to vote more than this other person who's like brand new or something. So that, to me, that's—
I worry that there's not enough value accrual in what you just described. That there's been so much value that has accrued to these protocols because of their governance. And like Uniswap, so there's like, oh, maybe someday there will be claim on fees, but who knows? We don't like that. That's not assured. But I heard what I thought was a pretty reasonable argument about why, even if there was no fees, that there was still economic power to being able to control the vote for there to be no fees, right? If you're a major LP on Uniswap and you're earning a whole bunch of money by providing LP, and you don't want to have to share with the uni holders, you use your uni position to vote no, don't share them, so that you can continue like your main business of being an LP provider. So I feel that I don't want to totally disconnect the economic value of sort of this governance asset, because I think it's such an exciting space. I think it's too much. Like I want to find some medium, but I just think there's so much opportunity in that. The other thing I want to say is maybe one, you know, Pastor was asking what are the more optimal. I don't have it all figured out, but it keeps coming back to me of quadratic delegated voting, some way of combining those two things where you're always better off if you get more money, or if you get more people. Like you can build in either of those ways. And you know, under quadratic voting as it is today, people add up faster than money. You know, and you could find the right balance of those. But I think it'd be really cool if you could have some people like, all right, they have voting power mostly because they have money, and you have other people who's like, they have voting power mostly because they have community behind them. So it somehow, and then there will be some people in the middle that have both money and community behind them, but either side can help like boost that up. I think that could be a really cool model.
And in that system, that's where it's really important that we have one person, one vote. Like
100%.
We definitely need something like BrightID to make sure that the person with a lot of money isn't acting like a whole lot of people. Yeah.
Exactly like we're seeing from the Gitcoin guy who delegated to me, who's doing it at least to 4 people. And if you don't dig in, you'd assume that it was 4 different people, but I know it's one. And if they're doing it once, they're probably doing it more than once.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's why I think, you know, it depends a lot on what is being governed, because yeah, something like Uniswap, like you were saying, because like the skin in the game is providing massive amounts of liquidity. It sort of does make more sense to have whales involved, despite that, you know, maybe not feeling so great if you're not a whale. It still sort of makes sense, but you can temper that. You can temper that with things like quadratic voting, with like there's some sort of limit you can set. You just have to set the appropriate limit. So yeah, I mean, the alternative is just not reining in whales at all. Like the whales are just like, however much money you can put up, that's how much voting power you have. Like that's one way to do it that doesn't seem very good. And then with BrightID, you can choose anything all the way from like one person, one vote, everyone has equal vote, like money has nothing to do with it, all the way up to, you know, like maybe just, let's say quadratic, the square root of however much money you put up. So you can still put up a ton, but it's going to take the square root or something like that, or a cap that's set really high. Like you can have voting tokens up to this cap, but that it's a really high cap. So there are like, there's room for whales, but there's still some sort of cap, so that, you know, there's not unlimited room for whales. So I guess the point is, with BrightID, you get that flexibility to at least do something. Without BrightID, you can't really do anything. You can't do any of that stuff.
Are there any disadvantages in your mind for a system where each person has only one vote?
Yeah,
Like
not
exactly equal vote.
Yeah, well, it's more about who you give the vote to, because if you just indiscriminately give a vote to everybody that shows up and you don't do any sort of check, like whether or not they have some sort of skin in the game, then what will happen is people who have more skin in the game, or what they'll do is they'll bribe an army of people. They'll just like figure out ways to, like, hey, you know, set up some website or something. There's things called dark DAOs, which are basically ways you can set up this anonymous DAO that you can go in and plonk your vote in there so that someone else can vote for you. You plonk your vote in, and at the end, when the dark DAO achieves its goals, it pays out money to everybody that plonked their vote in. So I can, as someone who has skin in the game, who wants to be a whale, if it's just a straight up one person, one vote, I can create a dark DAO, collect a whole bunch of votes from people who got votes who just don't care, because everybody gets a vote. And so I can give them instructions. I can say, like, here's how you go to sign up to vote. Once you get your vote token, come over here, put it in the dark DAO, and then you'll get $5 at the end of the day or whatever. And so you make it really easy for people to sell you their vote, and then bam, now you're a whale again. And so it's like, that's the problem, is you got, like, the amount of voting power each person has to be the right amount, the appropriate amount for how much they understand, how much skin they have in the game, how much they care, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Vitalik goes over a bunch of different ways to purchase somebody's vote, and it's as simple as using like a DeFi platform, right? If you we've coupled the governance token with a value bearing instrument. So if you deposit this asset into like MakerDAO and you're gaining interest off of it, that contract has all of the voting power for that that token without having the skin in the game aspect of it, right? And to answer your question, Paslar, about like a downside to having one person, one vote, and to kind of build off what Adam was saying, like DAOs already have an issue of low voter turnout, and many folks just want to speculate on this token because it's going to be worth something more than it is today, and they don't really care to vote. And so we already have low voter turnout, and so we ask, like, how can we increase voter turnout? And then following the DeFi hype train is like, you give incentives, like everything you gain interest on everything. So like, why don't we incentivize it? But then you start to get into a problem where it becomes a voter education problem, where if you're just like blindly incentivized to vote, then you're not going to be incentivized to vote, cast an educated vote. Right. So you're just going to go click a button, get your payout, and leave. So maybe finding ways that one person, one vote can gain an incentive if they vote with the majority, and there is some stake, there's some skin in the game that the people that vote in the minority lose a part of their voting power for future votes. And I think in this way you can draw value to people that are raising up the protocol or adding value to the protocol. But then you can still get into a problem of I guess the game theory plays into effect. It's like you're now not necessarily voting for the thing that you think is best for the protocol, but you're voting for what you think other people will think is best for the protocol. And so there's this layer upon layer of the the Keynesian beauty contest game theory, and it's like the different layers of game theory. Like, oh, I think you're going to vote this way, but if you think I know you're going to vote this way, then I'm going to vote a different way, and you get into this like recursive devolution of insanity. But yeah, I think somewhere in there lies an answer. I'm not exactly sure where it is.
Yep.
Like with the incentivization, we get to the grounds of like having the authority to say if a vote is like logical and is a good vote or a bad vote. I'm not sure if there is any way to put this authority to any person or even a group of people to say that this person is voting in a meaningful way and his votes are in the good, or this other person is just voting randomly. Because as soon as you get that power to a group of people, then it's not a voting anymore. It's just people deciding who should vote and how they should vote.
Yeah.
Right. So I wasn't saying like making a value judgment on whether it is a good vote or a bad vote, but rather whether or not you voted in the majority or the minority, right? If like majority, if we're looking for majority rule in a one person, one vote system, like 51% voted to one thing, it should win in a two option vote, basically. But and this is the way they do it in Celeste, right? When there's a dispute, you have a charter to hold things up against, right? You say, does this break the charter? Does this break our values and beliefs that we set out to uphold? If yes, then vote accordingly on this dispute. And you're voting, you're trying to vote in the majority. So if your vote goes, if you vote with the majority of people that vote that way, then you keep your stake and the minority loses a chunk of their stake and it goes to the people that voted the majority. Now that vote can then be escalated to Celeste if there was any kind of like thought of collusion, or if the outcome was, in itself against the charter. Like say or another thing to mention before I say that is that not everybody's involved in the first round of Celeste. Only 3 people are selected in the first round. And if it gets escalated, more people, then it goes to 9, then it goes to 27, then it goes to everybody, right? So it can be escalated multiple rounds. And each round you're trying to vote in the majority. And so in this way, like you can kind of mitigate the amount of energy you have to put in by only limiting the number of people, but you're maximizing the stake that is involved. Yeah. And if you lose, if you don't vote in the plurality, then you lose your stake.
Yeah, so I like those sorts of things where you get positive feedback based on how other people vote, and I really like things where innovative thinkers are rewarded for being first, like things that kind of resemble a futarchy, where it's like, okay, if I'm the first person to realize that like things should go this way, like things will be better for the organization if they go in this direction, and I'm the first one to cast my vote, and then a bunch of other people pile on top of my vote because they realize after I did, then I get rewarded. So I like systems where you get rewarded for voting in a way that turns out to be right, or it turns out to be a good way to vote. I really like systems like that, because that helps with the voter apathy problem. It's like, okay, you know, if I'm smart and I do my research, I have a way to make money off of my vote, rather than just kind of like randomly picking a box. And then I think most people are, so there's going to be a few people, and you know, you don't have to divide it up by like person, but you can think about it as instance. Like there's a few times where a person will get that spark of innovation and they'll just know like, okay, this is the right thing to do, and I'm the first person to know it. But most of the time, most of us are kind of voting based on like people. Most of the time we act sort of like sheep. We look for like a good follower or a good leader, and we follow the leader. And that's how most of us act most of the time. Every once in a while we'll get like some spark of innovation, but most of the time it's like we see some other good idea and we say, yeah, that's good. And so we like add our vote to that good idea, and that's fine. And so I think that like voting systems or DAOs that have rewards and reputation systems will also have ways to kind of like research other people and say like, okay, well, this person has been doing a great job of like, you know, like predicting what's going to be best for our DAO. And so I'm just, you know, like, if I don't know what to do, I'm just going to go with that person. I'm going to, you know, in a delegative democracy, you might even delegate your vote to that person. But even if it's not delegated, you might just see how that person is voting and vote with them because you trust them so much. So so that's how a lot of voting is going to happen. But we need to make sure we reward the people who are willing to like take a risk, go outside the box, come up with their own idea, and then be right about it later. So yeah, that's all those things I think help with the voter apathy problem.
Governance by prediction market.
Yeah, market, like the market, like you're like for me it goes back to something called public choice theory, which says like, okay, like when I'm voting for a presidential election, there may be, even if there's issues that I really care about, like my single vote is not going to get the job done, and so I feel like it's worthless. But if my vote like actually rewarded me for being right about something, either as a follower or as an innovator, then like, so if I'm the person that came up with the issue, or if I was the person who like followed the issue and voted with the issue, and that issue turned out to be beneficial, and then I get like personally rewarded for doing that, like I get paid for doing that, then now my vote is worth something. I'm getting paid for my vote. That's like a much better situation, I think, if we can create it.
I see Shaheen has his hand up for a while. Let's see what he's got.
Hello, guys. Yeah, I already got my answer twice. The first question Pastor asked, it's like similar kind of, because I'm very new to this kind of DAO and things. And the second question, Jorin already asked the same, like if majority going to vote for, like if I going to vote and I see there are a lot of people, they're voting in voting in the A poll, and there are a few people voting in the B poll. So for the reason, I'm gonna know that there is a certain note that who going to win, they will get reward, who going to lose, they will have to pay for the reward. So I'm definitely, if I don't know anything and if I don't know nothing, then I will go for the majority. And that's quite not make sense. And what it actually, we are the like Bangladeshi people and South Asian people are they are practically acknowledged that, because in our elections people come towards the people, the general people, and just pay for $5 and say you're gonna vote this poll. And what is it? Adam already said. So we practically can relate these things, and that can be happen. And the last thing, like the Adam said, what if we just board with a comment or do some task for that when we are boarding? So for that, if the comment or if the point we are making out while boarding, if that came up like a pretty good things, then we got paid, and then we get our vote like yeah, it just is that things should be like that, and that will be very good things. So that will be like accomplish that every vote matters, like Jorin and Adam said. My question was like, what if like everybody follow them? And because there are a lot of community going up in like behind the scene, they're just searching online what's going on, and they like make all together, get together, and they're saying that, okay, I'm giving you $2 and you just gonna do this, go to these things and do that. So what if they vote for majority and the like the things who what should be voted and win that not win? So what are you gonna do that about these things?
Yeah, I think like employing something that ClearFund does, where it's like a blind voting system where you can be coerced, but there's no way for the coercer to verify that you actually did the thing that they paid you to do. So then it kind of they might be just wasting their money. So I think that kind of helps the situation. And yeah, using like quadratic voting, like Phil said, would definitely help as well, because then it makes it even harder. They have to get more and more people to actually sway the vote. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, for me, the best situation, because I know that even things like Macy, which is what ClearFund uses, has weaknesses, and there's ways for really smart attackers to get around it. That really you want to create an economic situation where if somebody comes with you with a bribe and says, I'll pay you $5 to vote, you say no because you think you can earn more than that by voting the way you want to vote. You think that your vote's worth as much or more than what anyone's going to pay you. And so that's what we want. And then to answer your question about like, well, what if everybody just kind of blindly follows someone because just because they don't know or don't bother to research? Well, there is some research in knowing who to follow, because if like I'm just blindly following the majority, but I'm not paying attention to who's in that majority, and then one of these thought leaders, maybe they haven't voted yet, maybe they're still deliberating, and then they come and they vote the other way, or maybe they voted the other way already and other people for some reason haven't noticed. But if I'm paying attention and I notice like, okay, like the majority is voting this way, but the smart people are voting this way, I'm going to go with the smart people rather than the majority, because I think the majority can flip. Like I think the majority will change. So, and if I'm one of the earlier ones, I get paid more. So that's, so I think we need to create systems where it pays more to be smarter. And then that encourages people to like do their research rather than just blindly follow the majority.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, so there is like a very important part, like educations of your vote, the importance of your vote.
Yeah, and if you can get money, if you can get paid for educating yourself, that's ideal. And then when someone says like, hey, I want $10 for your vote, but you know that your vote is worth more than that, you're not going to sell your vote. So that's where education is really important.
Yeah, voter education is super important, and even if it's not, even if the vote outcome wouldn't be as much as the bribe nominally, I think instilling a sense of like community and ethics behind it, and that's the kind of system I would like to be a part of, where the people in the community actually care about the community and they're not just throwing away their vote, right? Because that person is not bribable. They know the value of their vote, and it's beyond a monetary amount.
Yeah, and something else I think is really, really important, and this is where BrightID can help more than anything, is universal basic income. So let's say that, because think about it, why do people like, why is someone like me, if someone came to me and wanted to buy my vote, I would never do it. But I can understand why someone else might. And what's the difference between me and someone else? It's probably that maybe, they don't know if they're going to have enough to pay their rent next month. And maybe I don't have that problem. And so I don't have to think about like, okay, what things am I going to have to do to like make sure that I have enough money next month. And then when someone comes and wants to buy my vote, I say, okay, well, I need the money desperately, so I'm gonna sell my vote. If I'm not in a desperate situation, then I can make more ethical decisions. So we need to, if we're going to be rewarding people for votes and votes have value and things like that, then we need to make sure that we couple that with like a universal basic income or a universal dividend to take people into a situation where they're not in survival mode all the time. Like they know they have enough to survive for the next month, so they don't have to make decisions that maybe they wouldn't feel so good about or wouldn't be ethical for them.
Yes, Sergey.
Hi, everyone. I really like the idea of giving.
Oh, you went on mute.
There you go. All right. I really like the idea of giving more weight to people that educate themselves about a proposal or the system itself. So we've talked about the possibility to make the discourse platform decentralized in the past. So I could imagine like linking your discourse to BrightID, for example, and also linking that to a DAO. So the system can detect if a user has opened up a corresponding thread to a proposal. So at least the system knows that user has looked at the idea behind the proposal. So in theory, that user knows something about the proposal. And going a step further, that user might interact in the conversation, even to the point that it might improve the initial proposal in some way. And I would love to see some kind of reward for that, for like giving them a little bit more weight in the next round of votes, or even in the same round. Yeah, that's my idea. I would really love to see that.
I love that idea, and it could also be coupled with like something like source cred that already kind of adds weight to people like reacting and interacting on discourse. So if that can like feed back into the governance token that you then use to vote, I think that's a very compelling kind of ecosystem.
Cool. I'm glad you like that.
We've talked about everything.
Yeah, that was great.
I think we lost Paslar, so he's not here to.
Like, how can we not do our connection party?
Yeah.
'Cause we lost. So I think we can stop the recording. I hope we get to the point. So the DAO that I'm really looking forward to is like the demilitarization DAO, where it's like, it de-escalates all warfare because like the DAO goes out and destroys like stockpiles of weapons. So anyways, DAOs for world peace. That's what I want. But I see there's massive potential for DAOs. So we're just like, we're in the early days of DAOs. We're like the pioneers, and I think everyone that has used DAOs so far has like suffered a lot of pain, like trying, like, man, this would have been so much easier if we just had done it in a like more centralized way. But I think it's going to pay off at some point when we have like really amazing DAOs that are doing amazing things. So, but let's stop the recording and let's do some connection parties.